10 years away from home, an unexpected reunion and a love that never died. He returned to take his place in society, but one look was enough to make him question everything. Between tradition and the heart, which path should he choose? Before we begin, like and subscribe so we can continue creating stories like this one. The Riverdale sun reflected on the windows of the mansion as Charles Morgan contemplated the city from the balcony of his room. After 10 years studying in Europe, he had finally returned to his homeland. As heir to the traditional Morgan family, owners of one of the greatest fortunes in 19th century America, he had been sent as a teenager to improve his education and prepare to take over the family business. The Morgan mansion was one of the most imposing in the Hudson Valley region, with its meticulously maintained gardens and ornate halls that used to receive the political and economic elite of the country. William, his father, was a personal advisor to the president and had great influence in Washington. "Master Charles, your father awaits you for lunch," announced Gerald, the butler who had known him since childhood. Charles adjusted his vest and walked down the long corridors adorned with paintings of his ancestors. Each step seemed to transport him back to childhood, when he ran freely along those same paths. "My son, how good to see you." William rose from the head of the table, opening his arms to receive him. "We need to discuss your future. Now that you've returned, there are many pending matters." During lunch, his father wasted no time in communicating his plans. The Blackwoods' daughter Isabella has been present at all social events, a refined young lady from an excellent family. A marriage between you would enormously strengthen our ties with the local nobility. Charles chewed slowly, avoiding answering immediately. The idea of an arranged marriage did not please him, but he knew that challenging his father during their first meal together in years would not be prudent. "I thought I'd get to know the city again before discussing such serious matters, Father. Everything has changed so much." William frowned but nodded. "Go then, but don't forget that on Friday we'll have a ball here at the mansion. It will be your official presentation to society since your return." After lunch, Charles ordered his horse to be prepared. He wanted to feel again the freedom he experienced when, as a boy, he would escape to explore the city. Mounted on his chestnut stallion, he rode down the hills toward downtown Riverdale. The movement in the central market was intense. Vendors announced their products, high society ladies strolled with their parasols, and workers carried merchandise from one side to another. It was among the crowd that Charles saw her. A young woman with curly brown hair was organizing fruits at a stall. Her simple dress contrasted with the natural elegance of her movements. Something about that figure made Charles's heart race. He approached as if an invisible force pulled him. "Pardon me, miss, but have we met before?" The young woman looked, and her brown eyes shone with immediate recognition. Charles Morgan." Her voice had a mixture of surprise and joy. It was as if time froze. Years disappeared in an instant, and he found himself transported to the afternoons of his childhood, when he played on the banks of the Hudson River with the daughter of the merchant who supplied imported spices to his family. Emma Wilson. "It can't be." She smiled, and that smile awakened memories that Charles had kept deep in his soul. He remembered the shared secrets, the laughter, the childish promises. "I thought you'd never return from England," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I came back just 2 days ago. And are you still here in your father's business?" "My father." Her countenance darkened for a moment. "He fell ill 3 years ago. Now, I take care of our small business alone." A man approached, interrupting the conversation. It was Edward, manager of the Morgan family warehouses. "Master Charles, what a surprise to find you here. Your father mentioned your return." He looked at Emma with an expression of disapproval. "I see you're already socializing." "Just reconnecting with old friends, Edward," replied Charles, feeling growing irritation at the insinuation. "Well, I don't want to interrupt, but I need to inform you that we're having problems with the coffee delivery. Perhaps you'd like to address this issue now that you've returned to assume your duties." Charles perceived the maneuver to distance him from there. "I'll deal with that tomorrow, Edward. Now, if you'll excuse us." When the manager walked away, Charles turned to Emma. "Forgive the interruption. I'd like to continue our conversation. May I come see you tomorrow?" Her eyes hesitated, divided between the joy of reunion and awareness of the social differences that separated them. "I don't know if it would be appropriate, Charles. You're now a man of high society, and You're still Emma, the most sincere person I've ever known." He gently touched her hand. "Please, just to talk." Reluctantly, she nodded. At the Blackwood mansion, Isabella observed her reflection in the mirror while her maid adjusted her new dress. At 22, she was considered the most beautiful and coveted young woman in Riverdale. Daughter of Baron Westfield, she had grown up believing that her destiny was to become the most powerful woman in the region. "They say the Morgan son has returned from England," commented her maid, adjusting the dress ribbons. "Yes, and on Friday, I'll finally meet him," Isabella replied with a calculated smile. "Father and William have already talked about our possible engagement. You'll look beautiful beside him at the altar." Isabella smiled, satisfied. For years, she had carefully cultivated her social position. Her father, the Baron, was the main creditor of the province and had direct influence in the Morgan family. Business. A marriage to Charles would consolidate the power of both families. When her maid left, Isabella opened a small jewelry box where she kept newspaper clippings about the Morgan family. She had carefully studied every aspect of that family, preparing for the moment when she would become part of it. Nothing would stand in her way. The next morning, Charles returned to the market. He found Emma organizing boxes of imported tea and for a moment just watched her, enchanted by the gracefulness of her movements. When she saw him, her face lit up. "You really came," she said, surprised. "I promised I would. And I never break my promises, remember?" They walked together to the banks of the Hudson River, reliving childhood memories and updating each other on the lost years. Charles talked about his studies in London, about the European cities he had visited, while Emma told about the changes in Riverdale, about how she took over her father's business when he fell ill. "You seem happy," she observed. "Now I am," he replied, looking into her eyes. What neither of them noticed was that from a distance a man was watching them attentively. Theodore, Isabella Blackwood's cousin, had been sent to monitor the Morgan heirs' movements. When he saw Charles and Emma together, he immediately knew his cousin would be interested in that information. The news of Charles Morgan's return quickly spread through the aristocratic halls of Riverdale. At the Blackwood mansion, Isabella received her cousin Theodore in the private sitting room, away from the servants' ears. "Are you absolutely certain of what you saw, Theodore?" Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and irritation as she firmly held her lace fan. "Absolute, cousin." The illustrious Morgan heir spent almost 2 hours in the company of that merchant. They walked by the river, laughed like old friends. Theodore adjusted his glasses on his thin face. They seemed intimate. Isabella rose abruptly, her blue silk dress rustling with the sudden movement. She walked to the window overlooking the impeccable gardens and took a deep breath. "Find out everything about this woman. Name, family, past. I want to know every detail of her insignificant existence." "I've already done that, cousin. Her name is Emma Wilson, daughter of Thomas Wilson, a spice merchant who supplies several families in the region. Her mother died when she was a child. They've lived modestly since her father fell ill a few years ago." Isabella turned slowly, a calculated smile forming on her perfect lips. "A commoner with no important connections," she murmured to herself. "This will be easier than I thought." In Baron Westfield's office, Isabella's father, an important meeting was taking place. William Morgan was seated in a leather armchair, discussing business. "So, it's decided. The marriage between our children will be announced at Friday's ball," stated the Baron, serving a glass of cognac for himself and his guest. "My son has just returned, Lawrence. Perhaps it would be prudent to give him some time to acclimate again," William considered. The Baron frowned, placing his glass on the table with more force than necessary. "Time? Time is against us, my friend. The investments in the railroads require immediate capital, and our association through this marriage will bring the stability that both families need. William sighed. He knew he was indebted to the Baron, and that a marriage between the heirs of the two families would be advantageous for all, but he knew his son's independent temperament and feared his reaction. Very well, I'll make the announcement during the ball. That same afternoon, Charles returned to the market, but didn't find Emma at her usual stall. An elderly lady selling lace at the neighboring stand recognized him. If you're looking for Miss Wilson, she had to rush home. Her father suddenly got worse. Concerned, Charles asked for directions to the Wilson residence. Unlike the luxurious mansion where he grew up, Emma's house was a modest construction on the outskirts of town. He knocked on the door, waiting anxiously. It was Emma herself who answered, with eyes red from crying. "Charles, what are you doing here?" "I heard your father isn't well. I came to offer help." She hesitated for a moment, divided between pride and necessity. Finally, she opened the door wider for him to enter. The interior of the house was simple but welcoming. In a bed in the living room, a gray-haired man was breathing with difficulty. "Emma, who is it?" asked Thomas Wilson with a weak voice. "It's Charles Morgan, father. Do you remember him? We used to play together when we were children." The man observed the visitor with tired eyes, but bright with intelligence. "William's son. Of course I remember. You grew up to look like your grandfather." Charles approached and sat in a chair near the bed. "Mr. Wilson, I came as soon as I heard. I can call the family doctor to examine you." "I don't need charity, young man," the man replied, proud despite his weakness. "It's not charity, sir. It's gratitude for the happy moments I spent in this house as a child." Thomas's gaze softened and he nodded slowly. In less than an hour, Dr. Mitchell, the Morgan family's personal physician, was examining Thomas Wilson while Charles and Emma waited in the small backyard garden. "You didn't have to do this," she murmured, hugging herself as if feeling cold despite the afternoon heat. "I did what any friend would do," he replied, approaching. "Are we really friends, Charles?" "After so many years?" Her eyes questioned him. "Our lives have taken such different paths. Time may have passed, but some things don't change." Charles gathered courage and gently held her hands. "During all those years in England, I never forgot your face, your laugh. You were the memory that brought me peace in difficult moments." Emma's cheeks blushed and she lowered her gaze. "You shouldn't say such things. You're a society man now, and you are the only person in this town who sees me as I really am, not as the Morgan heir." Dr. Mitchell came out to the garden, interrupting the moment. "Your father needs absolute rest, Miss Wilson. I've left the necessary medications and detailed instructions. I'll come check on him again tomorrow." When the doctor left, Charles held Emma's hands again. "I have to go now, but I'll return tomorrow. And I'd like you to come to the ball at our house on Friday." She widened her eyes, surprised. "To the ball? But I don't belong in that world, Charles. I don't even have an appropriate dress." "Leave that to me," he replied with a smile. "Please, say you'll come." After hesitating, Emma finally agreed. The next day, a box was delivered to the Wilson house. Inside was a beautiful emerald green silk dress, accompanied by gloves and delicate shoes. The note simply said, "For the most special woman in Riverdale, Sim." Meanwhile, at the Morgan mansion, William called his son to the office. "At tomorrow's ball, I will make an important announcement," he declared, without beating around the bush. "What kind of announcement, father?" "Your engagement to Isabella Blackwood." Charles felt his blood freeze in his veins. "Engagement? Father, I haven't even met the young lady." "You don't need to meet her to know she's an excellent match. Daughter of Baron Westfield, educated, in the best schools, of impeccable lineage. And what about my feelings? Don't I have the right to choose with whom I'll share my life?" William hit the table hard. "Feelings? Life is not a romance, Charles. We have responsibilities to our lineage, to our business. The Baron holds an important role in our investments. This union is strategic and irrevocable." Charles left the office furious, not noticing that Edward, the manager, had heard the entire conversation and was now quickly heading to the Blackwood house. In her ornate room, Isabella was receiving an unexpected visit. Edward bowed respectfully after transmitting the information. "So Charles intends to bring that merchant to the ball," she murmured, pacing back and forth, "and he opposes the engagement with our family. Interesting. What do you intend to do, miss?" A cold smile appeared on Isabella's face. "We'll welcome this commoner as she deserves." She opened a small jewelry box and removed a gold locket. "Do you know this object, Edward? It's the locket that belonged to your late mother, isn't it?" "Exactly. And tomorrow it will disappear, only to be found in very compromising circumstances." The night before the ball, Emma contemplated the beautiful emerald dress laid out on her simple bed. Her heart beat fast, divided between expectation and fear. She felt she was about to enter a world to which she didn't belong, but the idea of seeing Charles in his environment made her smile. Thomas Wilson observed his daughter from the chair, where he was resting. "Are you sure you want to go to this ball, my daughter? That world can be cruel to people like us." "I know, father, but Charles invited me personally. It would be a slight to refuse now." The old merchant sighed. "Just be careful. The Morgans are powerful people, and where there is power, there is also ambition and envy." What neither Emma nor Charles could imagine was that same night, Isabella Blackwood was finalizing her plan to transform the ball at the Morgan mansion into a trap that could destroy not only a reborn love, but also the honor of an entire family. The Morgan mansion shone like never before on that Friday night. Hundreds of candles illuminated the path from the gardens to the Grand Hall, where the elite of Riverdale and surroundings gathered in their most elegant attire. Luxurious carriages arrived incessantly, bringing barons, viscounts, and influential farmers with their families. Charles, in his impeccably cut suit, observed the entrance to the hall with growing anxiety. Each new guest who arrived increased his nervousness. Where was Emma? Had she given up? "My son, come greet Baron Westfield and his charming daughter," called William, gesturing for Charles to approach. Reluctantly, he walked to the small group, where his father was animatedly conversing. It was then that he saw Isabella Blackwood for the first time. She was, without doubt, a woman of extraordinary beauty, with perfectly arranged black hair and a red silk dress that enhanced her elegant silhouette. Her eyes, however, had a calculating gleam that did not escape Charles's perception. "Miss Blackwood, it's a pleasure to finally meet you," he greeted, bowing over the gloved hand she extended to him. "The pleasure is entirely mine, Mr. Morgan. I've heard so much about you over the years that I feel as if we've known each other for a long time." Her voice was melodious, but there was something about it that seemed too rehearsed. "I hope the stories have been favorable," Charles replied politely. "Oh, certainly. William always speaks of his son with great pride." She linked her arm with his with a naturalness that surprised him. "Perhaps you could show me the mansion gardens. They say they're the most beautiful in the region." Before Charles could respond, a collective murmur ran through the hall. All eyes turned to the entrance. Emma had just arrived, and her presence was breathtaking. The emerald green dress perfectly embraced her figure, and her brown hair was elegantly arranged in a simple bun adorned with small white flowers. Unlike the other women present, who seemed overloaded with jewels and ornaments, Emma wore only a delicate pearl necklace. Her natural beauty and the aura of authenticity that surrounded her created a striking contrast with the artificially refined atmosphere of the ball. Charles felt his heart race. He quickly excused himself to Isabella and walked toward the newcomer. The look of pure venom that the Baron's daughter cast at Charles's back did not go unnoticed by William, who frowned, concerned. "You came," said Charles, taking Emma's hands in his. "You look absolutely stunning." "I'm feeling completely out of place," she confessed in a low voice, noticing the curious and some clearly hostile looks around her. "Perhaps it was a mistake to come." "Not at all. You are the most authentic person in this hall full of falsities." He offered his arm. "Come, I want to introduce you to my father." William observed his son's approach with the unknown young woman and felt a pang of apprehension. There was something familiar about her, but he couldn't quite place it. "Father, I'd like to introduce Emma Wilson, a very special childhood friend." The Morgan patriarch studied the young woman for a few moments, before cordially extending his hand to her. "Wilson, daughter of Thomas Wilson, the spice merchant?" "Yes, sir," she replied, with a polite curtsy, but without subservience. "I remember your father. An honorable man. How is he?" "Recovering from an illness, sir, thanks to your son's kindness, who sent Dr. Mitchell to attend to him." William cast an inquisitive look at Charles, who held his father's gaze without hesitation. Before the conversation could continue, the musicians started a waltz. "May I have this dance?" Charles asked Emma. I don't know if I can," she hesitated. "I've never properly danced a waltz." "Just follow my steps. I promise not to let you fall." In the center of the hall, they began to twirl to the sound of the music. Initially hesitant, Emma soon found the rhythm and let herself be guided by Charles with natural grace. For those present, the chemistry between the two was visible, arousing interest and, in some cases, envy. From a corner of the hall, Isabella observed the scene with growing fury. At her side, Theodore seemed equally irritated. "He's displaying her as if she were a trophy," Isabella whispered, gripping her fan so tightly she almost broke it. "A vulgar merchant receiving some more attention than I, Isabella Blackwood." "Calm yourself, cousin. Our plan is underway," Theodore reminded her. "Edward has already placed the locket in the agreed place. When the right moment comes..." The waltz ended to polite applause. Charles and Emma seemed to exist in a separate world, absorbed in each other, oblivious to the intrigue surrounding them. He led her to the terrace where they could talk more privately. "Everyone is watching us," Emma commented, still flushed from the dance. "Let them watch." Charles gently touched her face. "I knew it would be like this from the moment I saw you again at the market. Nothing has changed, Emma. What I felt for you when we were children has only matured." "Charles, we need to be realistic. Your father has plans for you, I can see that clearly, and that young woman in the red dress won't take her eyes off us, as if she wanted to eliminate me with just her gaze." "Isabella Blackwood, my father intends to announce our engagement today, but I won't allow it." He firmly held Emma's hands. "I don't care about the consequences. I won't let them decide my future for me." Inside the hall, William was looking for his son. The time had come for the official announcement, and Charles's absence was beginning to generate comments. Baron Westfield approached, visibly impatient. "William, the guests await the announcement. Where is your son?" "He must be nearby, Lawrence. I'll look for him." At that moment, a female scream echoed through the hall. One of the maids had discovered that the valuable gold locket of the late Baroness Westfield, Isabella's mother, had disappeared from the room where the ladies left their belongings. "My locket!" exclaimed Isabella with exaggerated commotion. "The only memento of my dear mother." The ball immediately transformed into chaos. William, embarrassed by the incident in his house, ordered all exits to be closed and a discreet search to be conducted among the guests. "This is outrageous," protested one of the guests. "We are all good people here. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we need to resolve this incident as quickly and discreetly as possible," replied William, trying to calm the mood. On the terrace, oblivious to the initial tumult, Charles and Emma were sharing a moment of intimacy when they were interrupted by Theodore, who appeared abruptly. "Mr. Morgan, your father is looking for you. There's been an incident." When they returned to the hall, they found a tense environment. Servants discreetly searched the rooms, and guests commented in low voices. "What happened?" Charles asked his father. "The late Baroness's locket has disappeared, an object of great sentimental value to the Blackwood family." "And do they suspect one of the guests?" Before William could answer, Edward appeared, holding something in his hand. His face showed an expression of forced gravity. "Sir, I believe we've found the object in question." All eyes turned to the gold locket that Edward was displaying. Baron Westfield approached quickly. "Yes, it's my late wife's locket. Where did you find it?" Edward dramatically hesitated, looking at Emma. "It was found in this young lady's purse." A shocked silence took over the hall, followed by murmurs of indignation. Emma paled. Her eyes widened in absolute disbelief. "That's impossible," she exclaimed, trembling. "I would never touch something that doesn't belong to me." Charles immediately stood by her side. "There must be some mistake." Emma is incapable of such an act. Isabella advanced theatrically, her eyes shining with false indignation. The evidence speaks for itself. My dear mother's locket was found with her. She turned to the guests with a choked voice. We invited this person into our midst, and see how she repays our hospitality. Baron Westfield approached William with a grave expression. William, I demand that measures be taken. We cannot tolerate such an affront in our society. Father, this is clearly a setup, protested Charles, firmly holding Emma's trembling hand. William looked at his son and then at the accused young woman. There was something in her silent dignity in the way she faced the accusations, with her head held high despite the evident fear, that made him hesitate. Baron, I suggest we treat this matter with due discretion. Let's talk in my office. While William led the Baron and some other closer guests to a private room, Isabella took the opportunity to approach Emma, speaking low enough that only she could hear. A commoner will never have a place in this world. Go back to the market where you belong. Charles, noticing Isabella's approach, pulled Emma away. Don't believe a word she says. I'll resolve this. How, Charles? Asked Emma, with teary eyes. Everyone has already condemned me. Look around. No one doubts my guilt. It was true. The guests kept their distance, casting looks of contempt and whispering among themselves. The humiliation was palpable. The morning after the ball dawned grey in Riverdale, as if the sky itself shared the weight that had fallen on Emma's shoulders. Sitting at the head of her father's bed, she tried to contain her tears as she related the events of the previous night. Thomas Wilson listened to everything in silence, his aged face marked by a deep sadness that seemed to go beyond the incident. At the ball. My daughter, I feared something like this might happen. Their world is not for people like us. But I didn't do anything, Father. Someone placed that locket in my purse to incriminate me. The old merchant held his daughter's hand tenderly. I believe you, my Emma. I would never doubt your character. He hesitated, as if pondering whether he should continue. Perhaps it's time to tell you something I've kept for many years. The serious expression of her father made Emma move closer, intrigued. What are you talking about? About your mother, Emma, about Sarah's true story. At the Morgan mansion, Charles was facing his father's fury. The office, normally a place of tranquility, now seemed too small to contain the tension between the two men. How could you do this? William vociferated. Bring a thief to our house on the night we would announce your engagement. Emma is not a thief. Charles hit the table hard. It's all a setup, Father. Isabella Blackwood planned this, I'm sure of it. Listen to what you're saying. You accuse the Baron's daughter without proof while defending a young woman you barely know. I know her better than you imagine. We grew up together, shared secrets, dreams. Charles took a deep breath, trying to calm down. And I know how to recognize sincerity when I see it. Emma is incapable of such baseness. William studied his son for a few moments. There was a conviction in his eyes that he hadn't seen since Charles's late mother, Elizabeth, was still alive. The Baron demands reparation. If it weren't for my intervention, he would have called the police yesterday itself. I thank you for that, Father. Give me time to prove Emma's innocence. You have 3 days, Charles. After that, I can no longer delay the inevitable. Our position in society requires that we take action. Meanwhile, at the Blackwood mansion, Isabella was receiving Edward's visit in the music room, where she pretended to play piano to dispel any suspicion from the servants. The plan worked perfectly, miss, he said, keeping a respectful distance. Miss Wilson's reputation is ruined. No one in Riverdale society will receive her again. Isabella smiled, her fingers sliding over the piano keys in a soft melody. And Charles, he defends her ardently as expected, but William is furious. The engagement between you will merely be postponed, not cancelled. Isabella's satisfaction was short-lived. The door to the room opened abruptly and her father, the Baron, entered with a severe expression. Edward, leave us. When they were alone, the Baron faced his daughter with penetrating eyes. What have you done, Isabella? What are you talking about, Father? Don't take me for a fool. That locket never leaves your safe. How did it end up in a guest's purse? Isabella rose from the piano, maintaining her composure. It was necessary, Father. The Morgans were hesitating about the engagement. Charles was clearly fascinated by that merchant. The Baron approached, his voice low but charged with authority. Our family did not build its empire through petty tricks. We earned respect through strategy and intelligence. He firmly held his daughter's arm. Your behavior shames me, Isabella. All I did was for our family, to secure the alliance with the Morgans, at the expense of an innocent's reputation. The Baron shook his head, disappointed. There's something about this young woman that you don't know, something I myself discovered this morning. Isabella's face showed a mixture of surprise and apprehension. What could be so important about a simple merchant? She is not just a merchant. If my suspicions are correct, Emma Wilson may be the legitimate heir of the Hayworths. The shock made Isabella pale. The Hayworth family had been one of the most powerful in the region until they were mysteriously dispossessed of their properties 2 decades ago. Impossible. All the Hayworths disappeared. Not all, apparently, and if it's true, you've just made a very dangerous enemy. In the small Wilson house, Emma was listening attentively to the story her father was revealing, each word shaking the foundations of everything she believed she knew about her own identity. Your mother was not a simple woman of the people. Emma? Sarah was Sarah Hayworth, only daughter of Viscount Westlake. Viscount Westlake? Emma repeated, incredulous. But why did you never tell me? Thomas Wilson sighed deeply, the years of secrecy weighing on his shoulders. To protect you. The Hayworth family was the victim of a conspiracy. Their lands, titles, and fortunes were usurped through forged documents. Your mother managed to escape with her life, but had to abandon everything. Who did this? Father? Who would be capable of such cruelty? The old Baron Westfield, father of the current one. The revelation fell like lightning on Emma. Isabella's father, the same man who was now indirectly accusing her of theft, had been responsible for the ruin of her maternal family. Is that why the Blackwoods hate me so much? Do they know who I am? I doubt it. The current Baron was young at the time, and your mother kept her identity secret after we married. We moved to Riverdale and started a new life as merchants. Thomas squeezed his daughter's hand affectionately. But there's something you should know. Your mother kept evidence. Documents that prove the legitimate right of the Hayworths to the lands and titles. Emma's eyes widened. Where are these documents? Thomas pointed to a loose board in the floor. There, hidden all these years. Your mother wanted you to know the truth when you turned 21. She wanted to protect you until then. With trembling hands, Emma removed the board and found a small metal box. Inside were documents yellowed by time, land deeds, birth certificates, and, most surprisingly, a locket almost identical to the one that had been found in her purse the night before. It's the Hayworth family emblem, explained Thomas. Your mother kept it as a last reminder of her true identity. The similarity between the 2 lockets was no coincidence. Now Emma understood why she had been the target of such hostility from Isabella. It wasn't just about Charles, but perhaps an unconscious fear, an instinctive recognition of a threat to the Blackwoods' position. Meanwhile, in town, Charles was desperately seeking ways to prove Emma's innocence. Accompanied by James, a childhood friend who now worked as a lawyer, he visited shops and asked vendors if they had seen anything suspicious during the ball. It's practically impossible to prove that someone planted the locket in her purse. Charles, commented James as they walked through the market. You would need an eyewitness, and even then. I won't give up. I know Emma is innocent. It was then that they spotted Theodore, Isabella's cousin, leaving a jewelry shop. Something in the man's furtive behavior aroused Charles's suspicion. Let's follow him, he whispered to James. Keeping a safe distance, they followed Theodore to a tavern on the outskirts of town, a place frequented by people of dubious reputation. There they saw him meet with a thin, nervous-looking man. That's Richard Vega, a known forger, murmured James. What would Theodore be doing with him? Charles got close enough to hear part of the conversation. The work is done, Vega was saying, handing a small package to Theodore. Exactly as you asked. No one will be able to distinguish it from the original. Excellent. My cousin will be pleased. When Theodore left the tavern, Charles and James approached the forger. With a mixture of persuasion and veiled threat, they managed to make him confess that he had been hired to create an exact replica of the Blackwood family locket. "But why?" asked Charles. "I don't know the details, sir. I just followed specific instructions." Armed with this new information, Charles quickly returned to the mansion to confront his father. On the way, however, he crossed paths with a carriage where Emma was traveling, accompanied by her father, who seemed significantly stronger than in previous days. "Emma," he called, making the carriage stop. "We need to talk." Her expression had changed. In place of the humiliated young woman from the night before, there was now a determined woman, with a gleam of renewed dignity in her eyes. "I also have something important to tell you, Charles. Something that will change everything we thought. We knew about our families." It was then that Theodore, who was passing by the street at that exact moment, recognized the Wilsons and became visibly alarmed to see them talking with Charles. Without thinking twice, he ran toward the Blackwood mansion to alert Isabella. What none of them knew was that Baron Westfield, tormented by the revelations he had made about his family's past, had made a decision that would forever change the destiny of all involved. The gardens of the Riverdale governor's mansion were particularly beautiful that afternoon. Frequented by the elite of society, they served as a neutral stage for diplomatic meetings and conversations that required discretion. It was there, among carefully pruned rose bushes and ornamental fountains, that Baron Westfield requested a reserved meeting with William Morgan. The two men walked side by side, observed from a distance by curious onlookers who wondered what they were discussing with such seriousness. "William, what I'm going to tell you today may shake the structures of our families," began the Baron, his voice carrying a weight that was not characteristic of him. "But I believe the moment of truth has come." William looked at his old ally with growing concern. "What are you talking about, Lawrence?" "About the Hayworth family, about what my father did 20 years ago, and about how that directly connects to Thomas Wilson and his daughter." Meanwhile, at the Wilson house, Emma was showing Charles the documents she had found under the floorboard. The young Morgan examined each paper with growing attention, his expression alternating between surprise and indignation. "This explains why Isabella acted with such desperation," he concluded, holding the original Hayworth locket. "It wasn't just jealousy or obsession with the marriage, it was fear that her family would lose everything." "But why now? Why after so many years?" questioned Emma, seated beside her father, who was observing everything with tired but vigilant eyes. "Coincidence, perhaps," replied Thomas Wilson. "Or destiny. I always believed the truth would eventually come to light." Charles gently held Emma's hands between his. "With these documents, we can clear your name and restore what was taken from your family. But we need to act with caution. The Blackwoods have great influence, and this revelation will cause an unprecedented scandal." The sound of approaching horses interrupted the conversation. Through the window, they saw James, Charles's lawyer friend, quickly dismounting. "Charles," he called, entering without ceremony, "I have important news. Baron Westfield and your father are meeting in the governor's gardens. Something big is happening." "How do you know this?" "My father is a judge, remember. He was summoned to witness whatever they're discussing. It seems the Baron is prepared to make some kind of public confession." The news fell like a bomb on those present. Thomas Wilson rose with effort, leaning on his cane. "We need to be there. If the Baron is truly willing to reveal the truth, my presence is fundamental." At the Blackwood mansion, Theodore was entering like a hurricane into Isabella's chambers, where she was busy writing correspondence at her desk. "We have problems. The Wilsons are with Charles Morgan, and your father is meeting with William Morgan in the governor's gardens." Isabella rose abruptly, knocking over the inkwell onto the letters. What are you talking about?" "Your father left an hour ago, saying he needed to resolve a matter of honor, and now I found the Wilsons talking with Charles. There were papers, old documents." Understanding of what was happening struck Isabella like lightning. Her father had discovered something about the past, something related to the Wilsons. Prepare the carriage, Theodore, immediately. In the governor's gardens, the circle of people around the Baron and William was growing. Besides James's father, the judge, other influential members of Riverdale society had been summoned to witness the conversation. 20 years ago, the Baron began, his voice clear and firm. My father, the old Baron Westfield, orchestrated a conspiracy to take the lands and titles of the Hayworth family. Documents were forged, witnesses bribed, and a great injustice was committed. Shocked murmurs ran through the small group of listeners. William seemed particularly shaken. Why are you telling me this now, Lawrence? Because I recently discovered that Viscount Westlake's daughter, Sarah Hayworth, didn't disappear as everyone thought. She escaped, married a merchant named Thomas Wilson, and had a daughter. Emma, murmured William, finally understanding the magnitude of the situation. Exactly. Emma Wilson is the legitimate heir of the Hayworths, and my daughter, knowing or not knowing this fact, tried to destroy the young woman's reputation out of jealousy of your son. At that moment, a carriage abruptly stopped nearby. Charles, James, Emma, and Thomas Wilson hurriedly descended, approaching the group. Almost simultaneously, another carriage arrived, bringing Isabella and Theodore. The governor's garden transformed into the stage for a confrontation that had been postponed for decades. Faces from the past and present, victims and perpetrators, all gathered in a moment of inescapable truth. The Baron was the first to speak, addressing Thomas Wilson directly. Mr. Wilson, I know that no apology can repair what my family did to your wife and to you, but I am here to publicly recognize the injustice and take the necessary measures so that everything is restored to its rightful owner. Thomas Wilson, erect despite his advanced age and recent illness, faced the Baron with dignity. I never sought revenge, Baron, only protection for my daughter. Isabella, realizing that her world was collapsing, advanced toward her father. Father, what are you doing? Will you ruin our family because of them? I am saving what remains of our honor, Isabella. The Baron's tone was severe, and trying to prevent you from making more mistakes due to wounded pride. Emma, who until then had been observing everything in silence, stepped forward. In her hands, she held the original Hayworth locket. I didn't come here seeking vengeance or destruction. Her voice, although soft, carried a firmness that impressed everyone. I grew up as the daughter of an honorable merchant, and I was never ashamed of that. If there is noble blood in my veins, it was my father, Thomas Wilson, who taught me what true nobility means. The dignity in Emma's words silenced even Isabella, who for the first time seemed to see in that young woman something beyond a rival. William approached Charles, observing the interaction between all those present. It seems I was mistaken about many things, my son, including about Miss Wilson, or should I say Miss Hayworth. Does this change anything for you, Father? Asked Charles, standing beside Emma. It changes everything and nothing at the same time. William smiled slightly. I always wanted you to marry someone of noble lineage. Apparently your heart chose better than I could have planned. At that moment, Theodore, seeing that the situation was completely escaping control, decided to make one last desperate attempt. Quickly approaching Emma, he tried to snatch the documents from her hands. This is a farce. These papers are forgeries. Charles promptly reacted, grabbing Theodore by the arm and pushing him away from Emma. James and some other men present also moved to restrain Isabella's cousin. Enough, Theodore, ordered the Baron. Your services to this family end today. Isabella, seeing her accomplice being restrained, finally understood the seriousness of the situation. Her entire plan had crumbled, and now she faced not only the loss of a possible marriage, but also the public shame of her actions. It was you, wasn't it? Asked Emma, approaching Isabella. You placed the fake locket in my purse during the ball. Surrounded by accusing looks and with no way out, Isabella finally yielded. Yes, it was me. You didn't belong in that world. You appeared out of nowhere, capturing everyone's attention, especially Charles's. You're mistaken, Miss Blackwood, replied Emma with surprising calmness. I am the one who has always belonged in this place, I just didn't know it until now." The judge, who had witnessed the entire scene, stepped forward. "Baron Westfield, these documents will need to be officially verified, but your confession already constitutes sufficient basis for us to initiate the legal procedures of restitution." He turned to Thomas Wilson. "Sir, you and your daughter are entitled to full reparation." "And what about her?" asked Charles, pointing to Isabella. "Will the attempt to destroy Emma's reputation go unpunished?" "Charles," intervened Emma, gently holding his arm, "revenge would only perpetuate the cycle. I prefer to look to the future." The nobility of that gesture did not go unnoticed by those present. William, in particular, was observing the young woman with growing admiration. Baron Westfield approached his daughter, who was now silently crying. "Isabella, you will have to deal with the consequences of your actions. I cannot protect you from that." While the group discussed the next legal steps, Charles pulled Emma to a more secluded corner of the garden. "Amid all this madness, there's something we need to discuss," he said, holding her hands in his. "What?" "Us. Our future. Whether you're Emma Wilson or Emma Hayworth, my feelings haven't changed. In fact, they've only grown stronger seeing your dignity through all of this." Her eyes shone with contained emotion. "Charles, everything is happening so fast." "Some things don't need time, Emma. Some certainties are immediate, and I'm certain that I want to spend the rest of my life by your side." While the families discussed restitutions, titles, and legal reparations, Charles and Emma sealed their commitment with a discreet but deeply meaningful kiss. A kiss that represented not only the love between two people, but also the beginning of healing old wounds and the birth of a new chapter for the families of Riverdale. What none of them could foresee, however, was that Isabella Blackwood, humiliated and desperate, still had one final move to make. A final plan that, if successful, could take from Emma not only her newly discovered inheritance, but also the man she loved. The news about Emma's true identity and Baron Westfield's public confession spread through Riverdale like wildfire. In a few days, nothing else was discussed in cafes, salons, and social gatherings. The young woman who had been humiliated at a ball had suddenly become the legitimate heir to one of the greatest fortunes in the region. At the Morgan mansion, preparations for a new event were underway. William, surprised at himself for the quickness with which he had accepted the new directions, was personally supervising every detail. "The flowers need to be white and gold, Gerald," he instructed the butler, "and make sure the French champagne is properly chilled." The official announcement of the engagement between Charles Morgan and Emma Hayworth Wilson would take place in a week, and Riverdale society was in a frenzy over the invitation. Some, who days before had turned their faces away from Emma, at the fateful ball were now competing for the privilege of being in her presence. At the old Wilson home, Emma and her father were packing their last bags. The judge had managed in record time the initial restitution of one of the Hayworth family properties, a beautiful colonial-style mansion in the highest hills of Riverdale. "It seems like a dream, doesn't it?" commented Thomas, watching his daughter carefully fold a simple dress, a reminder of her life as a merchant. "A strange dream, father." Emma smiled without abandoning her task. "Sometimes I wonder if I wouldn't be happier if I had never discovered the truth. Our life was simple, but it had its own beauty." Thomas Wilson approached his daughter, gently touching her shoulder. "Your mother always said that truth, however painful it may be, is the only path to a full life. She would be proud to see the woman you've become, Emma." The young woman embraced her father tenderly. Despite all the suddenly recovered wealth, she knew that her true treasure was there, in the unconditional love of that man who had raised her alone, protecting her from a dark past while preparing her for an uncertain future. Meanwhile, at the Blackwood mansion, a very different climate prevailed. The Baron had withdrawn to his country house, seeking peace after the turmoil of recent days. Isabella remained locked in her chambers, refusing to see anyone. Only her trusted maid, Martha, was allowed to enter. "Miss, you need to eat," insisted Martha, placing a tray with tea and biscuits on the side table. Isabella, seated by the window, observed the distant town with an empty gaze. Her face, once luminous with pride, now showed marks of sleepless nights and days of constant crying. "How could I fall so low, Martha?" she murmured, more to herself than to the maid. "Mistakes are part of life, miss. What's important is what we do after them." "Mistakes?" Isabella laughed bitterly. "What I did goes beyond simple mistakes. I tried to destroy an innocent out of pure envy. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. An elegant carriage stopped in front of the Blackwood mansion, and Mrs. Eleanor Morgan, William's mother and Charles's grandmother, descended with the dignity characteristic of her 80 years. The Morgan family matriarch rarely left her property in the countryside, preferring the tranquility of rural life to the social agitation of Riverdale. Her presence in town was, therefore, a notable event in itself. "I would like to speak with Miss Isabella Blackwood," she announced to the butler who received her. Reluctantly, Isabella agreed to receive the illustrious visitor. She dressed appropriately for the first time in days and descended to the main room, where Mrs. Morgan was waiting. "Mrs. Morgan, I confess your visit surprises me," greeted Isabella, maintaining her composure despite the shame she felt. The elderly woman studied her for a few moments with perceptive eyes that seemed to see beyond appearances. "I came because I believe that every story has more than one side, young lady, and I would like to hear yours." "My side?" Isabella hesitated. "Everyone already knows what I did. There's no way to justify it." "I didn't come seeking justifications, but understanding." Mrs. Morgan adjusted herself in the armchair. "You know, when I was your age, I also made mistakes out of wounded pride. The difference is that I had someone to extend a hand to me when I needed it most." During the next hour, Isabella surprised herself by speaking openly with that lady who, for some inexplicable reason, seemed genuinely interested in her deeper motivations. She spoke of her lonely childhood, the constant pressure to be perfect, the fear of disappointing her father. "I'm not proud of what I did," concluded Isabella, with tears in her eyes, "and I don't know how to move forward with this weight on my conscience." Mrs. Morgan took the young woman's trembling hands in hers. "Redemption begins with the sincere recognition of error, my dear, and you've already taken that first step." Before leaving, the Morgan matriarch left a surprising invitation. Isabella was invited to Charles and Emma's engagement event. "But why?" asked the young woman, astonished. "After everything I did?" "Sometimes the most difficult path is precisely what we need to travel to heal. Think of it as an opportunity, not as a punishment." On Azakai, eve of the big event, Charles was visiting Emma at her new residence. The couple was strolling through the newly restored gardens, planning the future. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" he asked, noticing her distant look. "A little. I'm still getting used to all this attention." Emma smiled. "Did you know I received 17 letters from old friends whom I didn't know until last week?" They both laughed, but soon her countenance became serious again. "Charles, I've been thinking about Isabella." "What about her?" "I think we should invite her to tomorrow's event." Charles stopped abruptly, surprised. "Invite her? After everything she did to separate us? To ruin your reputation?" "Precisely because of that," Emma gently touched her fiancé's face. "I want to show that we don't harbor resentment, that this new beginning is truly new in every sense. You have an extraordinary heart, you know that?" Charles embraced her tenderly. "That's why I love you so much." What the couple didn't know was that Mrs. Morgan had already moved ahead, extending the invitation to Isabella days earlier. On the morning of the event, the Morgan mansion was impeccable. Fresh flowers adorned every corner, musicians discreetly rehearsed in the garden, and the best chefs in the province prepared culinary delights in the spacious kitchen. Charles, elegantly dressed, anxiously awaited in the main hall, surrounded by friends and family. Emma arrived accompanied by her father, stunning in a sky-blue dress that enhanced the natural simplicity of her beauty. Thomas Wilson, wearing a formal attire that William had insisted on gifting him, walked proudly beside his daughter. The party was proceeding perfectly. William and Thomas Wilson, to the surprise of many, seemed to have developed a genuine friendship, animatedly discussing joint projects to improve the lives of workers in the region. Mrs. Morgan charmed everyone with her stories of other times, and Charles couldn't take his eyes off his fiancée. It was then that a murmur ran through the hall, Isabella Blackwood had arrived, alone and dressed with discreet elegance. For a moment, everyone seemed to freeze, awaiting some kind of scene or confrontation. To general surprise, it was Emma who took the initiative, walking directly to the newcomer. "Thank you for coming, Isabella," she said, with sincerity in her voice. "Your presence means a lot to us." Isabella, visibly nervous, faced the one she had once considered her rival. "I don't know if I deserve to be here," she replied in a low voice. "We all deserve second chances." Emma smiled, offering her hand in a gesture of peace. "The past is behind us." The entire hall was observing the scene with expectation. After a moment of hesitation, Isabella accepted the extended hand, and a collective sigh of relief ran through the room. Charles approached, positioning himself beside Emma. "Welcome, Isabella," he said with genuine cordiality. The young Blackwood, for the first time since they had known her, demonstrated an authentic emotion. Her eyes filled with unshed tears, and she made a respectful curtsy to the couple. "I wish you all the happiness in the world from my heart." William, observing the scene, raised his glass. "I propose a toast to the new generation, which teaches us that true power lies not in titles or fortunes, but in the capacity to forgive and begin anew." Everyone raised their glasses in agreement. The atmosphere, previously tense, now dissolved into cheerful conversations and positive expectations. Even Theodore, who had been invited at Emma's request, seemed genuinely sorry, keeping discreetly to a corner of the hall. At the most awaited moment of the night, Charles took the floor, holding Emma's hand firmly. "A few months ago, I returned to Riverdale believing that my destiny was traced by others. Today, I know that my only true destiny was always this extraordinary woman." He smiled at Emma with adoration. "It doesn't matter if she is Emma Wilson or Emma Hayworth. For me, she will always be simply Emma, the bright-eyed girl who stole my heart when we were children and never gave it back." The sincere words moved all those present. Thomas Wilson discreetly wiped away a tear, while William smiled with paternal approval. "I am not a man of many words," continued Charles, "but I promise to honor this love every day of my life. And I promise, before all of you, to build alongside Emma a legacy of which we can be proud, based not on inherited privileges, but on honest work and compassion for the less fortunate." Emma, with moist eyes, took the floor next. "I grew up believing that my place in the world was small and limited. Today I know that our place is where our heart chooses to be." She looked affectionately at her father. "I thank Thomas Wilson for teaching me that true nobility is in actions, not in the family name. And I thank you, Charles, for never having stopped seeing me, even when the rest of the world looked through me." The couple sealed their commitment with a chaste but deeply emotional kiss under enthusiastic applause. The party continued into the night with music, dance, and celebration. In the following weeks, significant changes happened in Riverdale. Emma, now officially recognized as the Hayworth heir, surprised everyone by announcing that she would use a large part of her recovered fortune to establish schools and hospitals for the less fortunate. "Wealth only has true value when it benefits many, not just a few," she declared, upon inaugurating the first free school in the region, named after her mother, Sarah. Charles, in turn, revolutionized the Morgan family business, implementing fairer practices for workers and investing in technologies that improved general living conditions in the province. Isabella Blackwood, inspired by the forgiveness received, also found a new purpose. She convinced her father to transform some of their properties into shelters for orphaned girls, personally dedicating herself to the education of the young women. When Charles and Emma's wedding finally took place, in a simple and moving ceremony, in the gardens of the old Hayworth house, the entire town seemed to celebrate. Not just the union of two people who deeply loved each other, but the birth of a new era for Riverdale, based on values of reconciliation and renewal. At the reception after the ceremony, William pulled Thomas Wilson to a quiet corner of the garden. "Who would have thought, my friend, that our children would teach us so much about what really matters?" "Sarah always said that children are our greatest teachers," replied Thomas with a serene smile. "We just need to have enough humility to learn from them." Observing the newlywed couple dancing under the stars, surrounded by friends from all social classes. Both men knew they were witnessing not just the happy ending of a love story, but the promising beginning of many other stories that were yet to come. Dear listeners, we hope that Charles and Emma's journey has touched your hearts. This story of love, forgiveness, and new beginnings reminds us that our choices shape our destiny more than any title or fortune. For more touching stories like this one, we've prepared a special list that you can find by clicking on the left side of the screen. If you were moved by the twists and turns of The Prince and the Heiress, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique narratives that explore the complexities of the human soul. And you, have you ever experienced a story of new beginnings in your life? Share with us in the comments. We're eagerly waiting to read your experiences and suggestions for future stories.